Terms like race, ethnicity, and culture have become a part of our everyday language. We often use them interchangeably to define who we are. But, in fact, these terms don't mean the same thing. So, how are they different? Race refers to categories of people based on shared observable characteristics that are deemed important by society. These might include skin and hair color, facial features, or body shape and size. Because society has decided which features are important for categorizing people, race is considered to be a social construct. However, once people have been categorized, society treats them differently. As a result, racial categories can differ in vulnerability to illness, access to healthcare, and health outcomes. Ethnicity categorizes people based on common cultural characteristics. Ethnic groups may or may not share physical characteristics. When we talk about someone's ethnic background, we're often thinking more about a combination of ancestry and learned behaviors, such as language or diet. For example, two people, such as an African American or West Indian, might both identify their race as Black, but distinguish their ethnicity based on where they were raised. Conversely, ethnic groups such as British or Canadian include people from many racial backgrounds, such as Black, white, or Asian. There is overlap between the terms race and ethnicity, but they are unique in their own complex ways. Culture refers to the beliefs, traditions, social norms, and way of life shared by a group of people. It is shaped by the experiences of group members across generations and is reinforced through social interaction. People can share cultural practices even when they don't have any apparent biological commonalities. But where do these racial, ethnic, and cultural differences come from? It is understood that geography has played a significant role in human genetic variation. Populations were separated by large physical distances, barriers such as mountains or oceans, or both. Inhabitants of extremely different environments had to adapt to survive. Over generations, the physical features that promote survival in one climate, such as hotter regions near the equator, are likely very different from those of people living in a different climate, such as the Arctic. These adaptations have contributed to the diverse ethno-racial groups seen today. So, if the environment can affect genetics, and these differences determine racial categories, then it makes sense to assume that people from different races have distinct genes, right? Well, it turns out it's not that simple. In fact, there is no trademark gene or physical feature that categorizes you as a member of any given race. In reality, there are more genetic differences within racial groups than between them. This means that you might have more in common genetically with someone who appears to be of a different race than someone from your own race. Despite this, sadly, scientific research has historically used the idea of genetic differences between races to justify racial discrimination and stripping people of their dignity and rights. As an example, blood quantum is a measure of how much of a person's ancestry is supposedly of a given race. This means that if one parent is Black and the other parent is white, then the offspring's blood quantum in terms of being Black or white would be 50%. Assuming, of course, that each parent is 100% of their respective racial lineages, which is unlikely given the extent of interracial alliances. Blood quantum was used as a political tool in the United States to take away the treaty rights of Native Americans who weren't full blood. The one-drop rule is another form of racial quantum measurement that was used to identify or exclude members of a given racial group, such as Blacks in America or Jews in Europe. In this case, if there was anyone in a person's ancestry who was Black or Jewish, then this one drop of blood meant that the person was denied the same rights as whites or Aryans. Some German Nazis were known to kill themselves when they discovered that some long-past ancestor was Jewish, meaning that they had that one drop of blood in them. So, measures of blood quantum, whether too little or too much, are used in political ways to categorize people into different races, usually for the purpose of denying rights. But if we can't use genetic codes or blood quantum to clearly categorize people, how do we measure race? One of the most common ways to measure ethno-racial group membership is to ask people to self-identify which group they belong to. But even these self-report measures change over time. For example, the different categories for race used in the Canadian census today are very different from those used 50 years ago. Racial categories also vary from one place to another. For example, some North American research will use the category Asian, but Asian includes many different racial groups that are defined separately when the race is measured in Asia. All of this is to say that even though race is often understood to reflect genetic differences, many differences associated with race are the combined result of environmental conditions, societal policies, poverty, historic and collective trauma, or systems that were built against certain groups, all of which create racial disparities. While it would be counterproductive to ignore ethno-racial differences that underpin health inequities, their consideration needs to be done thoughtfully. Such differences likely have as much to do with social and environmental factors as they do with race, however it is defined. So, next time you ask, "What is your race?" remember that the answer often oversimplifies the complex interplay between biological and social factors that contribute to a person's ethno-racial identity.